Hello there, welcome back to the channel. This episode hasn't got anything to do with the current series, it was just something I kind of had on the back burner and I wanted to do it. I thought I'd finish it off now that I have a bit of time. And that is an episode on a seldom explored area of Trek. I've mentioned this in previous videos and I know other YouTubers have occasionally got into it. But there are civilian ships within Trek. And there are reasons why we don't see them too often, but realistically, most ships within the Federation and out of the Federation would probably be under civilian, not government or military control, but very likely under regulation, a bit like how a private citizen can own a plane or a car, only with a matter-antimatter reactor capable of leveling half a continent built into it. So obviously, you know, there's some pretty serious no-nos with these ships, but these aren't seen very often, although they are occasionally mentioned and you can make suppositions that they exist. We don't get to see too many of them. And the logistics of how exactly a civilian gets like their own personal transport or cruiser or something is kind of hard to untangle. In fact, near impossible, and I'll be anything I say I'll be likely guessing, so I'll be guessing. So there's no particular order, this isn't a ranking or a listing in any way, and I'm going to miss a few. If I do miss them, put them in the comments below and I'll try and get a video about them out at some point in the future. With that said, again, in no particular order, and also just FYI, I'm not doing full breakdowns of these ships. Those will be done in later episodes somewhere down the line. This is just going to be basically a compilation. So, with that said, we've got the J-class freighter. This vessel was introduced sometime in the 21st century. These ships had a maximum warp of about 1.8, although they were capable of being retrofitted with a warp 3 capability a number of years after they were originally launched. In their stock form, these rather large space trucks were larger than an NX-class vessel, easily hitting 200 meters or more. And of course, they were very modular in design, with containers on the sides running port and starboard down the ship to allow them to carry different types of cargo, and also possibly, and I say only possibly, I'm not sure, there's a bit of supposition, possibly adjustable in length, because we do know the front module can detach and the rear module seems to be just sort of assembled. So these things can get longer, wider, something, depending on the type of containers they have, who knows. But in their stock form, they have these port starboard sort of large containers stuck on the sides, warp nacelles near the front, and are armed with plasma cannons and some kind of polarized hull plating. According to legend, because every warp reactor was a miracle of technology in the time when these things were being built, Zephyr and Cochrane assisted in the construction of every designed warp engine built at the time, and it was said that he personally signed the inside of every reactor casing. Whether or not that's true, because you've got to imagine there were multiple factories around Earth producing these engines, maybe even a few on Mars within his lifetime, who knows, but I suppose it's possible. It's kind of a nice thought. These ships were regulated by the Earth Cargo Authority and were multi-generational vessels in a sense, because the kind of people that would own these ships, and they were owned, were families and extended families, and the crew of these ships would sort of inherit them from their parents and would run them for decades. These vessels were seen all over the Alpha and Beta quadrants and were built in extremely large numbers. Many of the crews of these ships would go on to have service within Starfleet, because Starfleet would try to snap up as many pilots and personnel from these ships as it could for the experience of deep space operations that they all had. And individuals such as Travis Mayweather came from a background in these freighter crews and would go on to be the chief helmsman of the NX-01 Enterprise. I'm not going to cover the J-class, although I do know that I mentioned J-class, I actually meant Y-class before, but the two vessels are very similar, or with only superficial differences in the sort of size and type of flexibility and mission profile the two vessels can go on, but they date from the same era, they serve a very similar function, they're under the same umbrella, and the only real differences seem to be with the J-class, its containers are more anchored to it, and either it's a trailer that the ship can tow, or it is pure and simply a sort of stock built vessel unlike the Y class that does seem to have a bit more utility. But let's move on to another ship, and this vessel is going to be one I'm going to have to go through quickly because there's not really much on it, and that would be the Festoon. This is a ship owned by Mudd's father-in-law in the 23rd century. This is an extremely large palace in space. I'm not going to cover it extensively because I would like to do a more detailed breakdown of this ship in the future with what information we do have. It has a lot of exterior ornamentation. Weaponry is unknown, but it was likely armed on some level considering the wealth and power that the individual that owned this vessel had. I would hazard a guess that this is something akin to a mega yacht in the 23rd century, and is probably custom built rather than a specific class, but I could be wrong. There could be a type of classification of ship which just is customized, a bit like a Bentley. So you've got a Bentley Continental, say, but no two Bentley Continentals are ever exactly the same because they're all customized. You got to say basic frame, but other than that, that could be more or less what the Festoon was. Very little is known about the ship. It's warp capable, it's extremely large, and was pretty much dwarfing the USS Discovery. But that said, it was probably nowhere near as powerful. So gotta move on from that ship to the Merchantman, another 23rd century vessel. This class of ship was the so-called Antares class. Now, the Antares class has many variants. It's not known exactly who built this ship. It was crewed by humans and had a human name, Merchantman. The basic hull profile is used by various different species, including the Shellyak and humans. It's not entirely clear if this vessel was an original ship built by humans, say, again by the Earth Cargo Authority, or was a ship that they had simply purchased and acquired from some other organization, such as the Orions or whoever else might use it. And if you can hear a dancing noise in the background, that is my dog jumping around for some reason. I don't know if the microphone's picking it up, just so you know what that is. The ship was destroyed by the Klingons in the late 23rd century, as its meager defences were no match for a single Brel-class bird of prey. One of the things we will note about many of these civilian ships is they're either sort of cruisers and yachts, lightly armed if armed at all, and they're freighters. Basically, civilians running the backbone. It's a bit like how a cargo container is not a warship, it certainly is larger than a military ship usually, but is run by civilian personnel or merchant navies, not by any kind of government. Another type of civilian ship, fairly widely used but was combat effective, was the Condor class courier. This vessel was originally designed for travel between various different human colonies. This ship might be better known by its designation as the Marquis Raider. It comes in two basic sizes, but both are basically the same hull profile. Also, considering that the Jaeger class starship utilizes much of the same hull geometry as this craft, I speculate here, but considering the flexibility and versatility of this design, it was a favoured design by the Federation, by humans, and was also used by Starfleet. These ships may have originally been developed by Starfleet, but were also utilized in civilian areas such as intercolonial transport. They still seem to have been representative of some kind of government or local authority rather than necessarily being in the hands of individuals using them personally, at least not the larger ones anyway. The smaller ones may have been in private hands, but as these were non-military and would have still been civilian government ships, they were still technically a civilian craft. They were armed with phasers, but it was only later that the Marquis would modify them to have torpedo launchers and upgrade the shielding and other tactical systems, such as enhancing the sensors to make them more accurate. These ships were decades old by the time the Marquis got their hands on them, and similar to another vessel that we're going to lead into now, they are, I suspect, originally a Starfleet ship that went into civilian use rather than necessarily a ship that was purpose-designed for civilian needs. Similar to the Oberth class vessel. Now I know you're automatically going to say that is a Starfleet ship, and yes it is. But Oberth class ships are ubiquitous across the Federation. They are widely used and are often seen civilian owned and operated. Even in the era of the big D herself, the Enterprise under Captain Jean-Luc Picard, these vessels were often seen utilised by civilian personnel and by colonies as transports, light cargo vessels, even for civilian research purposes outside of Starfleet. Obviously, because these vessels are ex-Starfleet, they would have been heavily modified to remove some of the weaponry and other systems, even though they were never particularly a tactical vessel. But we do see this in our world today. We see some military vessels, say dating from the 1940s, used as hotels, used as theme parks. We've seen them modified into restaurants, all kinds of things, not to mention just simply museum ships. It's perfectly plausible that Oberth class and perhaps even other ships such as Constitution, perhaps considering its age, are actually in use by various colonial or other civil authorities across the Federation. I don't know that for 100% fact, but the fact that they're using Oberth class, which is a fact, makes that door open, wide open, to the use of other ships. Some of the only few other civilian ships we've ever seen used in the Federation would be a vessel like Mudd's ship. There are various different types and designs of this vessel depending on era. I'm going to assume that Mudd owned more than one ship. One vessel we see having multiple nacelles, again a heavily customized ship with a lot of capabilities including internal holo projectors and such things. This was basically a cargo/raiding ship. He was also known to have controlled a small type of light transport, and also in an alternate timeline a sort of weird disc-shaped ship. Slight error there, just to insert this. The vessel Mudd used in the alternate timeline was a Comorian trading vessel, not a human civilian ship. Still a civilian vessel, and a ship under civilian control. But just to clarify, it was actually a non-human ship. And I was mostly meaning to cover in this video human civilian vessels. These were civilian craft. Considering the technology and how easily the Starfleet personnel were able to operate them, they were likely, again, human, or at least Federation, I would guess human, ships operated by one Harry Mudd. Now we get into a bit more speculation here, right? There are other civilian ships, I'm aware I'm missing them, but my sort of thought process as I went into this video was, how the F do they even get these ships? Where are they getting them from? I mean, I get the Oberth class, and ships like the SS Raven, which I didn't include on this list in case someone's going to put it in the comments, because strictly speaking, not a civilian ship. The Raven had a registration number, it had the designation SS Raven, NAR, off the top of my head I forget its registration number. This vessel was owned and operated by a science directorate, a sort of subdivision, not necessarily of Starfleet, but certainly from within the Federation. And it was leased to the Hansen family, it was not theirs. So there's the question, how did they get them? And again, we're going to dive into speculation here. In the original series, we hear Kirk and others reference Federation credits. Now, credits is often an easy term to get away from the use of money. They don't want to use dollars or pounds or whatever they don't want to use in whatever particular movie or series they're making. So they'll say, oh, credits. But credits could also mean you accumulate them another way. Now, it's hard to say exactly how Federation citizens accumulate credits, but if you get enough of them, you're still in a market economy, ships are still available. And although it's easy to say, oh, we don't need money when you're aboard a Federation starship like, let's say, the USS Enterprise D, where you've got replicators, holodecks, arboretums, massive you've got pools with dolphins in them to go swimming in, shuttles to buzz around on your own personal interests. Apparently you've got lots of downtime from the sort of 4-shift schedule brought in by the awesome Captain Jellicoe, and basically you're working 6 hours a day, 5 days a week maybe. You've got a lot of downtime to go to the multiple holodecks, to be in a jazz band, to go to the various bars on the ship and basically do what the hell you like. And let's face it, Starfleet ain't exactly like really strict on its oversight of what a lot of these people seem to be doing most of the time. So you've got a pretty easy sweet life and you don't need money. If you do happen to need something from off the ship, the captain will probably arrange it, he'll probably get it for you, or if you don't, you just bloody replicate it. As it's actually pointed out to the Ferengi in an episode once, why do you guys even need money? Because you can replicate anything that you goddamn well need. Now, that's not entirely true, but it's true for a lot of things, and it does sort of devalue the idea of needing money. So, that said, that's easy to do aboard the Enterprise D. It's not maybe so easy to do on backwater colony out near the Cardassian border. Maybe you need weapons. Starfleet ain't going to give them to you, but the Ferengi, they are, but they want money. So you got to give the Ferengi some money. So money and an economically based society exists somewhere within the Federation that is allowing people to buy and operate these vessels. Like the La Serena, again, formerly a Starfleet ship under civilian control. It's never exactly stipulated how we got it, but it's certainly not a Starfleet controlled ship anymore. So where are these people getting these ships? And we do know that, like, Mudd's father-in-law was a very wealthy individual who got his ship very likely as a result of his wealth. So that, it's pure speculation. Some of it, they get them because they're colonial governments or some other body or organization that gets the ships either built for them or whatever, outsourcing to an external power. But where are they getting the money in the first place? The Federation must have some kind of economically based society in the first place. But with that said, let me know in the comments below your theories on these ships and which one is your favourite. And again, which ones have I missed? Because I know I'm missing the odd civilian ship that has been seen. But they are so rare, but they have to exist. And they probably exist in far greater numbers than Starfleet. And if you think Starfleet's got, what, 10,000 ships? For every one Starfleet vessel, I wouldn't be shocked if there was 100 civilian ships. And that's just from Earth, not including the 200 plus Federation worlds, who we do know, in the 24th century at least, are still owning and operating independent navies of Starfleet. With that said, that is the end of this video, and thank you for watching. If you got all the way to the end, a like, share and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. And if you want to share this video, that is also good, as the channel is growing and I am trying to dedicate more of my time to it, which at the moment I have plenty of. I'd just like to say a thank you to everyone for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoy making these. If you did enjoy it, please consider giving a like, share and a subscribe, and maybe checking out the other videos on the screen right now, and in the description box below there are links to my other social media accounts.